أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون. الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى. والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. واللعنة دائمة الباقي إلى أعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم وغاصب حقوقهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. صلوات. With the blessings of the month of Ramadan, we started with the brief discussion on the theme of Tawbah, and yesterday was the second session of that. Inshallah, we'll continue that for tomorrow night. We talked about what is the meaning of Tawbah and the importance of Tawbah, and tomorrow night we'll talk about the first Tawbah which was done by Adam alayhi salam. What does it mean? He's a Nabi who was Ma'soom. How do you explain that? But that's for tomorrow. For tonight, keeping in mind that this is the month of mercy and forgiveness, and also it coincides with the eve of the wafat anniversary of Bibi Khadija salawatullah alayha. The ayat that I recited is from Surah Al-Rum, ayat number 21, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the relationship within the family. And, this is an ayat where I have talked about it in many marriage ceremonies. And there are two important elements that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions there, that there are two things He has blessed every marriage with that. One is mawadda and the other is rahmah. And this is the month of rahmah. Mawadda means love and rahmah means mercy and compassion. And looking at it, I thought it's important to talk about the example of Rasulullah and Khadija salawatullah alayhuma. You see, you have to realize that, mashallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had allowed the Prophet to have many wives. Although we just have the, nominal honor only for 4 at a time. But that's just for the books, huh? Don't take it that I'm encouraging that, no. But when it comes to the, the life of the Prophet, 8 to 9 wives. And people say that, he was very blessed. What you have to realize is that this, first of all, the marriage of Bibi Khadija was very unique. As long as she was alive, Rasulullah never married a second wife. That's one thing. The second thing, I think you have to realize that perhaps some of these, there are all different reasons for the multiple marriage of Rasulullah. I have a booklet on it, available for free download if you want. It's on a series of Prophet Muhammad. And one of them talks about polygamy and Prophet's marriage. But one of the issues that I see from the Quranic point of view is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to give us an example that marriages are not always easy. There are challenges, and one of the main issues is that if you look at your own marriage as a challenge, then you will be able to deal with it on the basis of sabr and patience. Quran does not shy away from talking about this difficult, human issues. For example, if you look at Surah Tahrim, Surah number 66 of the Quran, that is actually a surah which talks about the challenges in marriage. And the examples mentioned there are from the Anbiya, most of them. You have the example of Prophet Nuh and his wife. You have the example of Prophet Lut and his wife. And these were very difficult challenges that they had. And then we have, interestingly, the surah starts with the example of our own Prophet, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the whole issue is that you don't see any example there where the prophets just decided, okay, it's enough, talaq, 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 khuda hafiz. They went through the challenges in their own ways. Of course, in the case of Lut and Nuh, the situation was different, how it ended. But it's interesting to see how the early ayat, which is talking about the challenge that Rasulullah faced in his own life. And this is where the ayat begins addressing him. Ya ayyuhan nabi, lima tuharrimu ma ahalla Allah laka tabtaghi maradat azwajik. This is going back to this whole story. Now, among the Mufassirin of the Quran, there are different versions, but one of the most common version is that this was a situation of jealousy. So if you want to have multiple wives, be ready that with this you'll have to deal with the issue of jealousy. It's human nature. Okay? And especially this ayat talks about the jealousy of two wives, Hafsa and Aisha. And I'm not reading politics here. This is the ayat of Quran I'm talking about. Okay? And they kind of felt, jealous with Zainab binti Jahash, who was also a cousin from her mother's side with the Prophet. And she used to, whenever the Prophet would go to her, she would make a drink for him, which was made from honey. Honey, shahad ka sharbat. And so basically they decided, the two of them, that, whenever he comes from her, we're going to say, your mouth was smelling bad, because of the honey drink. And it happened to be in that way. And Rasulullah, this is the issue. It is not an issue of, haram or guna here. Something which is halal, you can decide that, okay, I'm not going to eat this anymore. It's, let me give you a positive example. I didn't know about it till many, many years later. That when I went to Iran to study, I was 15 years old, and somebody told my mother that they don't have mangoes in Iran. Now, mangoes in Dar es Salaam are plentiful, in India it's plentiful. When she heard that, she stopped eating mangoes. I don't think she made qasam or anything like that, but my son is not going to get money, mangoes over there, so I'm not going to eat. So it is halal. Eating mango is not wajib. Neither is it mustahab either. I haven't seen any hadith about it. And so I don't think there is a word in Arabic for it either. So if something which is halal, you can, in a different situation. My mother's situation was different. That was for, her love for me, that since my son is not going to get mango, I'm not going to eat. Rasulullah basically here decided, when he looked at this situation, he said, okay, he took an oath in the name of Allah that I'm not going to drink this drink anymore, known as maghafir. He did that. Made a pledge that I'm not going to drink this halal drink anymore. But he told Hafsa, she was the one who said, your mouth is smelling. He said, I would like you to keep this as a confidence issue between, you shouldn't be talking about it to others. However, she went to her friend and, discussed and, mentioned this. And this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala initially sent this ayat. About, 5 ayat coming in Surah Tahrim, right at the beginning. And my point is that this is not just history. This is actually a lesson for us. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nabi, lima tuharrimu ma ahallallahu laka. That, oh the Prophet, why you are making things which are halal? Allah has made it halal for you. Why you are making it haram on yourself? تبتغي مرضات أزواجك, just to please the desire of your wives. And this is, they conspired against him in a way. And so, Wallahu Ghafurur Rahim, Allah, if they repent, then Allah is forgiving and merciful. قَدْ فَرَضَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ تَحِلَّةَ أَيْمَانِكُمْ. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet and the Muslims in general, if you take such an oath or a qasam to prevent yourself from something which is halal, and then you decide, well, I want to have it again, there is a way. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Allah has initiated for you tahilla, to make halal the oath that you had made. And what is that? You have to pay a kafara for it. And once you pay the kafara, then your qasam is over. And so before you do qasam for things, be careful. Or even the mannat. Some people say, if this happens, I'm going to, pray 10 rakat every day of my life. But come on, that's probably, you were in this josh and enthusiasm for what you want to get fulfilled from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But think about it. Would you be able to fulfill, this qasam or nazar of that type if your wish is granted? So you had to look at your own situation and be practical. So in those situations, what do you do? If you're stuck now and you've done this qasam and you cannot really follow up in the right way, then there is kafara for it. Wallahu mawlakum wa huwa al-alimul hakim. Allah is your master and He is all-knowing and wise. So this is first issue of, relieving the Prophet from the qasam that he has, the oath that he has taken. Then he now turns to this challenge that Rasulullah had. وَإِذْ أَسَرَّ النَّبِي إِلَى بَعْضِ أَزْوَاجِهِ. When the Prophet basically said to one of the wives, to keep a secret, which was about his oath, حديثا فَلَمَّا نَبَعَتْ بِهِ. But then when she went and talked about it to another wife, وَأَظْهَرَهُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet that your wife whom you had asked not to disclose this qasam of yours, your oath, to anyone, she has gone and talked to her friend. عَرَّفَ بَعْضُهُ وَعَرَضَ عَنْ بَعْضٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only mentioned half of their conversation to the Nabi, and He left the other half, didn't mention to the Prophet. فَلَمَّا نَبَّأَهَا بِهِ. Then Rasulullah called Hafsa. Said, I told you not to say this to anyone. قالت من أنبأك هذا. She turned around and said to the Prophet, who told you that I have said it to someone? قال, and these are real life situations we are talking about, okay? My point is that, marriages have their own challenges. قال, the Prophet said, نبأني العليم الخبير. This is the ayat of Quran, not hadith. The Prophet said that the one who is all-knowing and all-aware, he told me that this is what you have done. You trust, broken my trust on this issue. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now addresses the two wives. He says, in tatuba. In a way, this ayat relates to my theme of tawbah. In tatuba, this is in dual tense. If both of these ladies do tawbah, ilallah, they return back to Allah with forgiveness, فَقَدْ سَغَتْ قُلُوبَكُمَا, because your hearts have deviated. وَإِن تَظَاهَرَ عَلَيْهِ, and remember, if both of you gang up against him, I'm using more simple language here. Okay, تَظَاهَرَ means they support one another against Rasulullah, conspire against him. فَإِن تَظَاهَرَ عَلَيْهِ, if you end up supporting, planning things against him, then remember, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ مَوْلَاهُ. Remember that Allah is the master of your husband, your Rasul. Not only فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ مَوْلَاهُ, Allah is the master, وَجِبْرَئِيلُ وَصَالِحُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ بَعْضُ ذَلِكَ ظَهِيرًا. The way you have done تَظَاهَرَ عَلَيْهِ, if you do that, Allah is the master of Rasul, but besides him, Jibreel is the chief of the Malaika, وَصَالِحُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, and the good doer among the mu'mineen, وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ, and the Malaika in general. So Jibreel is being honored by mentioning his name separately. And then the Malaika, all these three elements, they will be the supporters of Rasul. I will be the master of Muhammad, and these three will be the supporters of Muhammad. Jibreel we know, Malaika, the angels we know. Who is this in between? Salihul Mu'mineen, the good doer among the Mu'mineen. This is Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. So they are being warned, don't think Muhammad is alone. I am the master, Jibreel is there, Malaika is there, Ali is there. And so this is where we are being told, ayat number 5, just to be related to the Prophet in that way, whether wife or any other relationship, is not sufficient. You have to be on that level of iman and taqwa and good deeds. And therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Asa Rabbuhu, it is possible that his Lord, in tallaqakunna, it is possible that his Lord will give you divorce you from him, and yubaddila lahu, so that he can replace, wives for him, khayran min kunna, who will be better than you. And how will they be better? Muslimatin, mu'minat, they will be Muslim, they will be mu'mina, qanitat, they will be obedient, ta'ibat, they are those who constantly do tawbah, abidat, worshippers, sa'ihat, those who do the fasting, and they could be either, widow, or they could be virgin, doesn't matter. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here basically is giving us the example of the Prophet, that even in his life, and he's our Prophet, yes, he had multiple wives, but there were challenges. But we see that Rasulullah didn't say, okay, talaq, talaq, talaq. He went through that level of sabr and patience. Salawat padhne ek baar aur. Program after iftar in that way is good. I don't worry about the time here. So. Another example, just to say that this events in the Quran basically are there to make us realize that if Rasulullah can have challenges in his family life, who are us to think that we are better? And this is where we have to realize that marriage life can have challenges. In Surah Ahzab, Surah number 33, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about an incident after the Battle of Khaybar, when the Muslims came, victorious with the Mali Ghanimat, the booty. When he reached to his home, and his wives were there, they basically asked him, anything for us? And Rasulullah said, I, distributed everything among those who were fighting and the people. Some of them were angry that he didn't bring anything for us, to the extent they started bragging that if he divorces us, we can marry the men who are of our financial, social status. This attitude of some of these wives, it really hurt the Prophet. And he, to show his dislike of their attitude, he actually separated from them and went to the house of Maria Qibtiyya, who was a slave gifted to him from Egypt. And he actually spent 29 days there, didn't go to his home, to show his displeasure about it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then reveals these ayat addressing the Prophet and his wives. It's interesting that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't leave it to the Prophet that, okay, you are angry, you have full right, 29 days you have been away. No, the ayat come down, Ya ayyuhan Nabi. Oh Muhammad, you are sometimes very polite. I'm putting my words here, it's not ayat of Quran, okay? The way it has been, as if Allah is saying that, you are being, and I'll say this is the style of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya ayyuhan Nabi, qul li azwajik. O the Prophet, say to your wives, in kuntunna turidna al-hayata ad-dunya wa zinataha fata'alayna. If you desire this world's life and its beauty, then come. Umatti'ukunna, then come. I will give you a provision, what you want, mal dunya. But then, usarrihkunna sarahan jamila. But then I will give you an amicable divorce with it. You want mal, I'll give you mal, but the mal will come with talaq. وإن كنتن تردن الله ورسوله. But if you desire Allah and His Messenger, وَالدَّارَ الْآخِرَةِ, and the later abode in the hereafter, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ أَعَدَّ لِلْمُحْسِنَاتِ مِنْكُنَّ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. Then be assured that Allah has prepared for the good doers among you a great reward. And so, Allah is saying, give them two choice. You want mal dunya, I'll give you mal dunya, and then you are free. You are no more in my marriage. But if you want Allah, Rasul, and the Akhirah, Allah has prepared for you ajr azim in the Akhirah. And then the ayat goes on, Ya Nisa an-Nabi. And the whole series of commands that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to the wives of the Prophet about being modest and chaste in their attitude. Many things are there. The issue that you are the wives of the Prophet and your position and responsibility is higher than those of the normal women. So be careful. And the ayat go, many ayat are there. So we see that from these two examples in Surah Tahrim and Surah Ahzab, that even a prophet, we say he's the prime example of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what was put into test and trial, especially when we talk about a marriage relationship. And this is where, we always have to go back to this element of mawadda and rahmah, to be flexible with one another, to be compassionate with one another, and to have this element of rahmah, which means, be flexible, do not always demand for your right. And this is on both sides. Salawat pढ़ने एक बार और. Why do we respect Bibi Khadija that much? Because if you look at the Quran and whatever is mentioned about Bibi Khadija, all these two incidents that I mentioned, it doesn't apply to her. This is after her wafat. But wherever she is mentioned in the Quran, it is always in a positive manner. And therefore, if you want to really ask who is the first lady of Islam, that is none other than Khadija salawatullah alayha. In Surah Al-Duha, Surah number 93, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala counts the blessings He has given to the Prophet of Islam, it's interesting. He talks about three things there, where He says, Alam yajidka yatiman fa'awa. O Muhammad, did not I find you as an orphan and provided shelter for you? And this was in form of his grandfather first, and then more as far as the time is concerned with the protection given by Abu Talib. So this is where we see that, one issue was the issue of, taking care of the Prophet when he was an orphan. وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَى. This is where many people do the translation, and they found you lost. And then he guided you, as if, he was not on the guidance before. We go with the hadith of Imam Rida alayhi salatu wasalam. It's not that Muhammad was lost in his path. It means that Muhammad was an unknown entity, lost among the people of Makkah. They didn't know him. Fahada, until Allah guided them to him. But then the third important one, وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا, and did not Allah find you to be in need? فَأَغْنَى, and He made you ghani, free from need. Did He send money or bags of silver and gold coins to Rasulullah through Jibreel? No. Rasulullah became ghani and free from need by the wasila of Khadija salawatullah alayha. Those who do not believe in the wasila, they should realize that here also Allah is providing the shelter to Muhammad when he is yatim, but He doesn't do it Himself. He makes Abdul Muttalib and Abu Talib the wasila to provide shelter for Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to bless the Prophet to make him free from need. He doesn't send anything directly to Rasulullah. Rather, He makes Khadija the wasila for that. And this is where we have to realize, this concept of wasila is part of the Quranic teachings, and this is the process in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deals with human beings. And we see that, in the early days of Islam, when Muslims were facing challenges and difficulties, as far as financial support is concerned, it was the mal of Khadija which was used. It was the wealth of Khadija. Because she put everything after her marriage at the disposal of Rasulullah. You do the way you want. You are the master. And this is even before Islam started. And it wouldn't be wrong even to say that even the first migration of Muslims, to Abyssinia was financed by the money and the wealth of Bibi Khadija. Basically we can say that it was the sword of Ali on one side and the wealth of Khadija which actually supported the Islam during the early days. Salawat पढ़ने एक बार और. It's to her credit that Muslims, unanimously say that the first person to accept Islam, they say Khadija. Although then they have, their own games to play. Then they'd say, women in the first, men, so and so, among children, Ali. So they divided in that way. But nobody denies that she is considered to be the first one who accepted the message of the Prophet. And it's interesting the way it has been described in our sources. And this is, quoting Allah Majlisi in Bihar al-Anwar, that when the Prophet came down from the cave of Hira after the first revelation from Surah Alaq, when Khadija looked at the face of Rasulullah, she immediately said, وَمَا هَذَا النُّورِ. She could sense something special has happened. What is this nur that I can, feel in your face? And this is where the Prophet says, هَذَا نُورُ النَّبُوَّةِ. This is the light of prophethood. قُولِي لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَمُحَمَّدٌ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. And therefore say La ilaha illallah and Muhammadun Rasulullah. And this is where Khadija responds to that immediately. But she said something very interesting. She says, طالما قد عرفت ذلك. She said, in my heart, she doesn't use those words exactly, but this is what it means. That, for a long time I knew this. I knew that you are a Nabi. We have our own narrations where even before this wahi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent the Quran, the closer he was getting to the days of Bi'sat, wherever he would pass by a rock or a plant, they will say salam. Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah, or Assalamu alayka ya Nabiullah. If the plants and the trees and the rock, inanimate things also, had this ma'rifat to know Rasulullah even before his Bi'sat, somebody who spent 15 years with him, day and night, she would not have the ma'rifat of this person, of course. And that is where she says, طالما قد عرفت ذلك آمنت وصدقت ورضيت وسلمت. I believe in you, I testify to your truth, I am pleased with this, and I submit myself. Salawat pradhne para. So those were indeed the good days for Rasulullah, and he remembered Khadija till the end of his life. Even though he had so many wives later on, and this is where we see that this love for Khadija in his heart never diminished. And I would like to actually give you the testimony, and purposely I use this term, this testimony of the youngest of his wife from Sahih Bukhari. Sahih Bukhari has an incident where whenever even the sister of Khadija would sometimes come and visit with her children, the Prophet used to become very happy to see them. He would remember Khadija. And, even when he would do qurbani or nazr of, qurbani and things like that, he would always ask that the best part of the meat be sent to the relatives of Khadija. So this was an ongoing thing. And so this is a narration from Sahih Bukhari by Aisha herself, where she says, when I saw these things again and again and again, that Rasulullah remembers Khadija in this way, فَغِرْتُ. I became jealous. And one day she ended up saying to the Prophet, how long are you going to remember that old woman? حمراء الشدقين, even his teeth were falling off. حركت في الدهر, many years ago she has passed away. وَقَدْ أَبْدَلَكَ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا مِنْهَا. I'm sure this is what made Rasulullah very upset. while Allah has replaced a better one for you. The Prophet became very angry. فَتَغَيَّرَ وَجْهُ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. These are her words. Rasulullah's face turned red. لَمْ أَرَهُ تَغَيَّرَ عِنْدَ شَيْءٍ قَطُّ إِلَّا عِنْدَ نُزُولِ الْوَحْيِ. I only saw that face in that way when the revelation was coming down on him. And then Sayyid Bukhari is silent. He's very clever in selecting. He doesn't give the whole quotation of what, Aisha had mentioned. But then we have, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, At-Tirmidhi, and Ibn Kathir, who have given the whole statement of Aisha, that she did not only say that he became very angry, rather the Prophet turned back and he said, كيف قلتِ? How can you say this about Khadija? والله لقد آمنت بي إذ كذبني الناس. By Allah, she believed in me when people rejected me. وعوتني إذ رفضني الناس. She sheltered me where people abandoned me. ورزقت منها الولد. And Allah has basically blessed me with children through her. وَحَرَّمْتُمُوهُ مِنِّي. Rather, you have all been deprived from children as far as I'm concerned. وَرَاحَ عَلَيَّ بِهَا شَهْرًا. This is the full quotation. And then she says that he became upset with me and didn't come to me for 1 month. And this is where we have to realize that, when we talk about these incidents, they have own dimensions for discussion, but also when we talk about our own personal life, remember that, challenges have been there, and patience is the basis of dealing with this kind of situation. Salawat padhne ke baad. خداوند عالم نے محمد آل محمد کے نور کو ہمیشہ محفوظ رکھا ہے. اب دیکھیں صحیح بخاری میں جو روایت ہے، جامع ترمذی میں ہے، ابن کثیر کے پاس ہے، یہ سب وہ چیزیں ہیں کہ جو لوگوں نے چھپانے کی کوشش کی، لیکن پھر بھی خداوند عالم نے اس کو محفوظ رکھا ہے اہل بیت کی حقانیت کے لیے. اور خصوصاً جناب خدیجہ کے سلسلے میں آپ کو کوئی نہیں ملے گا کہ جو کسی بھی عنوان سے جناب خدیجہ کو ڈسکاؤنٹ کرنے کی کوشش کرے یا ان کی عظمت کو ختم کرنے کی کوشش کرے. اتنا ہی کافی ہے تاریخی اعتبار سے کہ جب تک جناب ابو طالب اور جناب خدیجہ زندہ رہیں، قریش کی ہمت نہیں ہوئی کہ فزیکلی جو ہے رسول اسلام کو کچھ نقصان پہنچائیں. ابو طالب کی ہیبت قوم پر اور ان کا سپورٹ، اور جناب خدیجہ نے جس طرح سے ساتھ دیا ہے، یعنی آپ سوچ لیں وہ جنہیں ملیکۃ العرب کہا جاتا تھا، 3 سال انہوں نے صحابہ ابی طالب میں رسول اسلام کے ساتھ سوشو اکونامک بوائکاٹ کے زمانے میں گزارا ہے. لیکن کہیں آپ کو نہیں ملے گا کہ خدیجہ نے ایک بار بھی ریگریٹ کیا ہو کہ ہم نے کیا پایا اس رشتے میں. نہیں، ان کی وفاداری رسول کے ساتھ، خدا کے ساتھ ٹاپ لیول پہ تھی، اور صحیح معنوں میں ہمارے لیے ہمیشہ وہ اسوہ حسنہ ہیں. مودت و رحمت کی جو بات ہوتی ہے شادیوں میں، اسوہ حسنہ ہمارے لیے رسول اور خدیجہ ہیں. اور اتفاق کی بات ہے کہ صحابہ ابی طالب کے اس بوائکاٹ کے بعد within few months جناب ابو طالب کی وفات واقع ہوتی ہے، پھر اس کے بعد جناب خدیجہ کی. اور انہی دونوں وفات کے بعد قریش نے یہ کانسپریسی اور پلاننگ شروع کی کہ رسول کو ایسیسینیٹ کیے جائے، اور خداوند عالم نے پھر جو آیات نازل کی اور حکم دیا رسول سے کہ وہ ہجرت کریں. اس عنوان کو اگر دیکھنا ہے تو یقیناً آج ہم لوگ بیوی خدیجہ کے وفات کے مجلس کے لیے جمع ہوئے ہیں، اور پرسہ ہم دے رہے ہیں فاطمہ زہرا کو. بی بی کی خدمت میں صرف ہم اتنا کہنا چاہیں گے کہ بی بی حالات بڑے مشکل تھے، لیکن وہ حالات جو بعد میں مدینہ میں ہوئے ہیں اس کے مقابلے میں یہ کچھ نہیں تھا. پھر بھی بہرحال احتراماً جو ہے جناب خدیجہ کا جنازہ اٹھا اور جنت المعلیٰ میں انہیں دفن کیا گیا. اس واقعے کو اگر یاد کرنا ہے ہمیں در ایک لحاظ سے رسول اسلام کی زندگی میں اور امیر المومنین کی زندگی میں جو کچھ پیرللز نظر آتے ہیں وہ اسی ٹائپ کے ہیں کہ رسول اسلام فرماتے ہیں کہ ہمارے دو حمایتی ستون تھے. ایک کا نام ابو طالب تھا اور دوسری کا نام خدیجہ تھا. اور اس کے بعد مکہ میں رہنا ممکن نہیں رہا اور ہجرت کرتے ہیں. رسول کے بعد جو حالات ہوئے ہیں اہل بیت کے لیے وہاں بھی جناب سیدہ نے جس طرح سے ساتھ دیا ہے علی کا، وہاں خدیجہ تھی جو ہر قدم میں رسول کے ساتھ رہی ہیں. یہاں فاطمہ تھی جو فدق کی مالکہ ہیں لیکن سب کچھ قربان کرتی ہیں اپنے شوہر علی کے لیے. وہاں وہ زوجہ رسول تھیں، یہاں یہ زوجہ امام ہے. اور عجیب و غریب منظر ہے کہ جب جناب سیدہ نے سب کچھ قربان کیا، فدق کا مطالبہ بھی اپنے لیے نہیں تھا بلکہ اس کے لیے اسی کے لیے تھا کہ اگر فدق کے ڈیمانڈ جو ہے قبول کر لیتے ہیں تو دوسرا ڈیمانڈ جناب سیدہ کا امیر المومنین کی خلافت کے سلسلے میں ہوتا. لیکن آپ دیکھتے ہیں کہ جو ظلم ہوا ہے جناب سیدہ پر اور جس اذیت سے گزری ہیں کہ جب جناب فاطمہ الزہرا کو علی نے دفن کیا ہے، دفن کرنے کے بعد قبر پر ایک جملہ کہتے ہیں میرے دو حمایتی ستون تھے. جس طرح سے رسول کے دو حمایتی ستون سے علی بھی یہی کہتے ہیں کہ میرے دو حمایتی ستون تھے، ایک رسول اسلام کی شکل میں جو ستون گرا ہے ان کے وفات کے وقت اور دوسرا ستون فاطمہ الزہرا کی شکل میں تھا. اور یہ آج ہم نے دفن کیا ہے. عزاداران حسین، آج ہم فاطمہ کی قبر کو بھی دیکھتے ہیں جنت البقیع میں ویران ہے، خدیجہ کی قبر کو بھی دیکھتے ہیں جنت المعلیٰ مکہ میں ویران ہے. بس اتنا ہم کہنا چاہیں گے بیوی آپ کے اور بھی اولاد ہیں، ان کے روزے آباد ہیں، آپ مشہد جائیے، آپ جائیے کربلا، سامرہ جائیے، کاظمین جائیے، لیکن آپ کی تربت کو دیکھ کر، آپ کی والدہ کی تربت کو دیکھنے کے بعد انسان روتا ہے، رونے کے علاوہ کچھ نہیں کر سکتا ہے. بس ہم انتظار میں ہیں ان کے کہ جو آنے کے بعد یہاں روزے کی تعمیر فرمائے. الا لعنۃ اللہ علی القوم الظالمین سیعلم الذین ظلموا ای منقلب ینقلبون. خداوندہ اس طلبہ قبول فرما، ہمارے گناہوں کو بخش دے، ہماری توفیقات میں اضافہ فرما. خداوندہ عالم اسلام میں صلح اور امن کی فضا پیدا کر، تکفیری افواج کی تمام صلاحیتوں کو نیست و نابود فرما، امام کے ظہور میں تعجیل فرما. ربنا تقبل منا انک انت السمیع العلیم.